How are you, my dear?
Good, how are you?
Can you hear me? Workshop is the CEO of Inspired, Tracy King. Some of you may remember her when she worked with MSET in 2016. She designed the beta version of what is ADEA's eLearn digital library. Through her firm, Inspired, she consults with organizations to help them strategically leverage their learning portfolios. Tracy is an author and sought after expert in learning design. She's been featured on NBC, ABC, Forbes, and US News and World Reports. And I can say that we are absolutely delighted to have her here with us today. And with that, I will turn it over to Tracy King.
Hey, thank you so much, Krista, and thanks everyone for being here today. This session is being recorded, and both sessions will be available upon completion of the training. ADEA, the team, will let you know how to access those recordings should you want to revisit any portion of the training. Want you to note that the conversations that we have in breakout rooms, that'll be tomorrow, will not be recorded. So when in breakout rooms, always take lots and lots of notes on those conversations. The content bearing slides are in your PDF workbook. And I put those in there so that you can focus on personalizing your insights and noting questions for follow-up versus having to write down any screen content. So let's dig in, shall we? So while COVID-19 is the contagious disease of the moment that's kind of derailing events in our face-to-face gatherings, scientists predict that antibiotic resistance and climate change both increase our risk for recurring pandemic conditions. And so this has inspired a lot of associations to really think about virtual learning, not just as a short-term bridge right now, but as a vital tool for reliably reaching out to their constituencies and delivering value, which means this is an opportunity for us to offer something new, something exciting for our members that we really want to get right. So we're going to break down this training into 2 workshop sessions. Today in session 1, we're going to be focusing on whether virtual event is a good fit, content and formats that perform well in virtual events. We're going to talk about engagement, considerations for event design, roles to produce a successful virtual event, and some production considerations. Tomorrow, we'll dig into keys to effective presentations and effective presenters. So really transitioning more into that speaker prep. We'll be talking about internal communication for virtual event planning and execution, as well as communication around stakeholders, speakers, and participants. And finally, we'll wrap up with a what's next conversation and some action planning so that we as a team can move forward applying the best of these best practices to the work that you're doing. All right, let's get started. So this will be no surprise to you that learning and networking are cornerstones of our membership value proposition. And as leaders behind the scenes of these experiences, you have insights on what it really takes to plan and facilitate learning and networking experiences. You know, there's a lot more effort behind the curtain than most participants realize. I've been designing experiences in adult learning and for workforce development for about 20 years now as both a design professional and an association volunteer as well. And so today and tomorrow, what I really want to share with you are practices and processes for not only delivering powerful programs, but hopefully having fun in the process as well. But first, let's just spend a moment acknowledging how you're feeling. Let's talk for just a moment about what you're worrying about. What aspects of event and speaker prep have amplified your stress and anxiety? I know that we're all feeling a little zoomed out. That's a real phenomenon. And I've left you an article resource about what's behind that, physically, emotionally, and even the brain strain around that in your workbook resources. But let's just start right now in the chat. Tell me some of the things that are worrying you, that are feeling stressful for you right now as you're making this transition to virtual events. And while you're warming up your fingers, I just want to also acknowledge I had taken a look at the survey feedback. Those of you that filled out that quick survey that Chris has sent out, a lot of people feeling some anxiety around engagement. I'm hearing that. Family health is another thing. Yeah, just around all of this is the anxiety that we feel that heaviness around health, contingency planning for sure. The plan A through Z for your virtual event, right? To make sure that things go as smoothly as possible, for sure. What else is on your mind? The learning curve, for sure. Because we're not only learning new technology, we're learning new ways to connect virtually as attendees and as staff to leaders. We're learning new ways to prepare speakers. There's a lot of learning and a lot of curves happening at once, right? Engagement and return on investment for participants, that's a great one, and we're going to talk about that today. Cross-generational engagement. I really love that question, and let's be sure to bring that up in our conversation around engagement today. And Tita says many of us are new too. So we're just jumping into this pool. It might feel like it's over our head, but I'm going to give you some tools to help you swim. So over the next couple of days, the three major areas that we're going to tackle are around designing virtual experiences. So we've got the same outcomes for our events, right? But we have some new tools and some new approaches in order to design those experiences. We're going to talk about facilitating these virtual events. So we get to show up in some new ways. We get to introduce some novel, some fresh experiences, but that means we have to also be behind the scenes facilitating those items. And then planning communication. Communication is both the foundation for a great event, and it's really the fuel that propels us to really deliver a magical experience. So those are the three bases that we're going to cover. And we're going to start by talking about whether a virtual event is actually a good fit. So when we design an experience, we start with an audience, we start with some intended outcomes in mind, right? But one of our first constraints that we bump up against is environment. An event in a conference center or a hotel or a resort or a museum or a restaurant or a boardroom, they all involve different sets of constraints and opportunities, right? So it's no different with virtual events. An event in a museum is going to be a different beast than an event in a hotel ballroom, just like an event in a place-based location is going to be a different beast than an event online. There really are no one-to-one correspondences here. If we really think about it, there are only constraints and opportunities. So when we consider transitioning an in-person event or experience to digital modes, there are some functions that we can reimagine with our new tools and opportunities for things that might not fit those tools at hand, right? We don't want to necessarily recreate an in-person networking event online, for example. We'll want to reimagine how to achieve those outcomes with our digital tools. So there are some things that we can do better in person, and there are some things that we can do better online. We get to be creative now. This is some of our fun space. So let's take a look at some of the advantages and challenges of virtual events and some of those opportunities and constraints. So as far as some of the advantages, scheduling flexibility is one of the top advantages, especially for our participants. A one-day conference can be split among a series of days, for example. I have one client who offers a week-long conference that will be facilitated virtually over 5 weeks. When participants aren't leaving home to attend an event, it becomes more challenging to dedicate full days of focus to event programming, especially when it's in front of a screen. So why not capitalize on the flexibility to schedule your event differently for how people prefer to access digital content, right? So that scheduling flexibility is really amazing. That also means all of your speakers don't have to be available on all the same day, right? If you're scheduling over a series of days, you get some flexibility there with the schedules of your speakers as well. The second really big one is accessibility. Of course, more people from more places can access our virtual events, which is a real bonus for us. We have the opportunity to expand our audience beyond what we can expect at an in-person event. And it's also important to consider accessibility from an accommodations perspective as well. So while we don't have food allergies and those types of restrictions, we may need to ensure equal access for those who are hard of hearing, for example. An advantage here is that we have multiple modes for delivering this support at a virtual event that may or may not be possible in person, financially more difficult. with, having an ASL interpreter on screen. They don't have to be present in multiple rooms. We have control over the space and can serve a lot of people in that space. We can have live closed captioning. We can have recorded closed captioning. We can have post-event transcript readouts. All of those things are wonderful opportunities to provide that support. If you do have hard of hearing participants, another thing that they will often request is to have any handouts in advance of the session, so that they're not looking at handouts when they want to be looking at the translator or the speaker. So just a couple of notes about that. Another great advantage or an opportunity in the virtual space is multimodal digital strategy. So when we're online, we behave differently. We have digital habits, we have our own digital norms, we have multiple tabs open and multiple apps running and multiple devices on our desk, right? We have access to more information when we're in this space. And so that's something that we can actually capitalize on when serving content virtually. So what this means for planning a virtual event is that we can offer content in more ways. Not everything has to be actually a presentation. It can be delivered via different digital modes that are complementary, and we can interact then in a wider variety of ways, really conveniently. Another advantage, of course, is pre-recording select components, which means we can also elect to pre-record some, facilitate some live. Pre-recording is amazing because it gives us some more control over the end product, particularly if we want higher production value for things like a president's address or sponsor spots or a keynote intro or award recognition or even a yoga break that's like on a beach. We have an opportunity to infuse a live meeting with some fun things that otherwise might not be able to happen with some of those recorded spots. And even I have clients that pair recorded content with live presentations, for instance, having recorded on-demand cases that are then discussed by a panel later in the event. So there are a lot of things that we can do there. And because of this flexibility, we can offer different types of tiered pricing and access. I'm seeing a lot of success right now offering a free tier, an all-access tier, and a premium all-access with recorded presentations. If you're going to have the all access, you might as well go premium, right? Get the whole thing. So what I'm seeing in my clients' meetings is the free tier is kind of hovered around 30% of registrations, which means the paid tiers are occupying 60% of registrants. And so just kind of a ballpark is you're budgeting something like that. That's what I'm seeing the fallout of that right now. So you can expect your free registrants will probably pop in and out of the meeting. They're going to be more of a sampler. And they're not going to have access to everything either, right? While paid participants will generally be more committed to attending all of the sessions. The final advantage I want to mention is ease of repurposing. We're online, right? It's easy to record. We don't have to have big camera setups in select rooms. We can record everything very easily. And if we design sessions to be segmented, then we have a lot of opportunity to create and share new experiences with that content. Some of our challenges include things like it's really hard to create a serendipitous meeting or those serendipitous networking opportunities in, the lunch line or in the hallway or running into people, at different parties and events and things like that. So we just have to be more intentional around those objectives, but that serendipity is something that we are missing in the space. The in the room energy is something that I hear from clients. They're like, oh, I just wish that we could help our participants feel in the room. And barring, virtual reality, that can be challenging. That can be a constraint for us. There are definitely lots of ways we can infuse interaction. We can infuse, community and conversation, but that in the room feeling is a little bit different now. Long informational session formats, really tough, really challenging in this space. So we'll be talking about length of different types of sessions and formats. Complex concurrents are also tough in this space. I don't know what experience you have with this right now. It's, having a couple concurrents is definitely doable, but a lot of our complex in-person meetings with multiple concurrents is really tough to manage in the virtual space. So that's another reason why extending a meeting over several weeks, a little bit every day, allows us to extend those concurrents out and becomes easier for us to facilitate as a team. And then, of course, transitioning presenters and producers to some new hat roles. We have some new responsibilities now when we're in the virtual space. That learning curve that you were talking about at the top of our time together that serves presenters as well as us as producers as well. So a challenge at first, but also something that we can definitely master. I've worked with the ADEA team before, incredibly smart and creative people. So I have full faith in you around that. All right. So converting a place-based event to virtual is one way of looking at it. Designing a virtual event is another way of looking at this. So are we tailoring an existing garment into a virtual event? Or are we cutting new cloth here? Will we be taking a blended approach perhaps? I'm seeing a lot of that in these transitionary meetings where some components are going to be tailored and some of those new components will be designed. But tell me a little bit right now in the chat where you are with the events that you have in mind. Which approach will be more reasonable and accessible to you? Are you converting an experience, or are you able to just sit in front of that design table and create something new? Okay, so converting 3 meetings, but creating a new annual session. Okay, great. So you'll get to have a little bit of a blend of both there. Yep, a little of both. Okay, so when you think about the opportunities and constraints when you're converting a place-based event versus designing a new event, what are your challenges in that? What is top of mind for you? Because we're going to be doing some of both. Yep. Length of time. Yeah. Length of time of planning, designing and implementing, I imagine. Time is a big one. Yep. Engagement for those events. Awesome. That'll be a good conversation for us today. Making sure people are engaged, that they're really getting something out of it. Breaks. Ooh, yeah, that's a conversation I can't wait to have with you. That's a fun one, actually. Interpersonal engagement as well, getting people to engage with one another. Zoom fatigue. I hear you. I hear you. And there are things that we can do to make these human experiences. So it's not just screen staring. Meeting attendee expectations and providing anticipated value. I love that comment. We have the opportunity to set a new table, right? To prepare our participants to have new expectations. And that's something that we can be very proactive about. It's not going to be the same experience. Chat fatigue. Oh, people afraid to chat already? So soon? Oh no, we're in trouble. Time zone considerations. Yeah, that's a really good one to be keeping in mind. I know you are a national organization with international reach, and so that can be very challenging. And that's why some on-demand content paired with some live content could really benefit a bigger meeting. Alternatives to networking receptions. Yeah, let's talk about that. We'll dig into some of those today, and we can even address that a little bit tomorrow if you have some questions for follow-up. One-on-one engagement, not just groups. So how do we bridge having, those intentional meetup moments, right? Finding and delivering fun. Where's the fun? Yeah, not just information, but really delivering the fun. Well, let's definitely talk about that. Alternatives to those unplanned connections and meeting new people. Yeah, we can definitely prepare for some of that, and some of that is just not the strength of this mode. And so we have to find our happy medium in there. Post-event strategies. Ooh, I like that conversation. That's a great conversation as well. So how do we connect this experience to what else ADEA is doing, what else ADEA is offering? Also concerned that meeting attendees will not feel that they're getting the value for their membership. Okay, so let's make that part of our real discussion about how we personalize and apply these concepts to ensure that we feel really confident about the value proposition in our events. Great conversation. So that segues perfectly into our next discussion, which is around content and formats. So if you want to, give your little spine a little twist right now in your chair as we dig into this session, maybe a little shoulder roll, get it in there. And we're gonna dig into this play space right now. So give me some of your quick takes here. As we work through this program today, I want you to consider how to express the impact and the key attributes that you see in meetings that you've valued that we can bridge to service our members. So tell me a little bit in the chat about what impact you want to have with your event. I know there's several events that are represented here in our group today, but what is your impact statement for that event? What really do you want to see come out of that? And this touches on that value proposition question a little bit. Yeah, the attendee concludes that this was time well spent. I'm so glad I was here. Yep, that's a great one. To provide the same valuable experience as an in-person event. Yes, so value we can do, experience will be different, but we can definitely trigger that this was an amazing experience feeling. Wanting to come back for another one. Oh yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Let's inspire our attendees with such a magical experience. They want another go round. We want their expectations to be surpassed, not just met, but absolutely blown out of the water. Actionable takeaways is really a big one too. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Really key. Jason also says that there are clear takeaways, that there's great learning and also a sense of community and belonging. So really thinking about how we can generate belonging in the virtual space is a great conversation for us to have. Thank you for that. How about the second question? So what are the top 3 to 5 challenges your members are facing right now that we could potentially address at these events? What are the challenges that are top of mind right now? They feel they still have a sense of networking. That's something that we definitely want to have at our event. Everyone feels stressed or experiencing shrinking budgets. That's definitely a concern. What other challenges are they facing? They're wearing multiple hats. There's a lot of uncertainty. Yeah, uncertainty just in general, culturally, as well as in our professions. Time constraints, for sure. Time is just, it means something different right now, doesn't it? It's kind of fast, slow time. Job security is a big one right now. Providing ROI for sponsors, that's definitely an important conversation. Meeting teaching requirements in this space, definitely at top of mind for your members. More frequent meetings, adding online teaching and learning to what they're doing, for sure. Potential big learning curves for them to teach online. All of these are top of mind for so many professionals, but very important for us to be thinking about how we can address those real concerns in our meetings. For this third question, when you think about the best events you've attended, what key attributes come to mind? What made it a special experience to you? Dynamic speakers and experiential. We'd love to hear more about that. What was those experience touch factors? What did they look like? So dynamic speakers is definitely important. We'll want to put that on our list of wants for the speakers that we recruit for our virtual events. Breakout conversations. Breakout conversations are really important. It's those table talks that we miss, right? Opportunity to network with peers. Compelling stories. Absolutely. Stories more vital than ever. In this context, when we are looking at digital content, often it's story driven. And so that becomes really important. Connecting to your everyday life work duties. I love that, because here we are sitting in our desk spaces typically, right? So we're in our work spaces. So how we connect, how we're interacting with one another on our screens through our conference to the work that's even right here, it can be very powerful, because we don't have that when we're at the rounds in the big rooms at a conference center, right? We don't have access to all of these pieces that we can when we're sitting in a virtual space. You felt more energetic and enthusiastic leaving the event than when you first arrived, and you couldn't wait to put your learnings into action. Again, keeping it super tight, super practical, something we can hit the ground running using. Diversity of speakers and their life experience is very, very important. And when the presentation allows for interaction, it's not just a video of a talking head. That's for sure very important. Leaving with feelings of inspiration and aspiration, no matter what challenges lie ahead, because when we get to interact, we know we're all in this together, don't we? And finally, that experiential piece included having a robot that was seating audience members. What? Literal fireworks that matched the speakers, smiles, etc. So clearly a place-based event. We can still include robots if we want to online. We can do that. We can have virtual fireworks. We could do that. But lots of takeaways for the types of experiences that we could also design for our members to inspire them, so they leave with those same great feelings. So a few words about how we can start to be thinking about the types of experiences that we're preparing, because different experiences require different speaker prep, right? They require different producer prep for us as well. And three common categories we see are presentation, facilitation, or facilitated learning. So what we're really looking at is a difference between learning versus information. So in a presentation, an expert presents information. The presenter is really the focal point of the session, and the goal is to inform participants about a subject, something that's important to our attendees. Facilitation is more of a neutral conversation. It's guidance toward a goal, such as consensus, where participants are the focal point, and typically the goal is to co-create a solution. Facilitated learning, on the other end of the spectrum, is expert guided as an experience, but the presenter and the participants share focus. The goal, of course, is transformation, because that's what learning is. This type of session requires interaction so that learning can actually happen. And upon completion of that program, the learner is able to be or do something new, different, or better. So each of these types of programs requires a different set, whether that's in a room or virtual, and different formats to accomplish those goals. So when we're in the virtual space, we have to set the virtual table. For presentations, in place-based situations, often we're sitting in rows. We can silently listen and take notes. We typically have a few minutes of Q&A at the end, right? It's more passive. For facilitation, when we walk in the room, it's a bunch of tables with materials supporting our discussion, and potentially solution prototyping materials and sticky notes and flip charts and markers, right? Whereas in facilitated learning, we might be at tables, we might be assigned at groups or work in pairs. There's content, and then there's doing, which for us in the virtual space could be discussion, it could be reflection or exercises or problem solving, any number of ways to really personalize the concepts that are being presented. So the first question to ask is, what type of session will we be delivering? And then we can talk about the best ways to support a speaker in preparing to deliver it. So let's look at a few concrete examples. So for offering a presentation or an education session, a great way to think through this is to specify key attributes of your session and then directly connect that to the speaker preparation that you can offer for it. So for informational presentations or for learning sessions, we really want to ensure that the speaker has great audio, video, and slide support, of course. Audio is the #1 driver in the virtual space, so audio has to be king. If we don't have good audio, it kind of ruins it for everyone. So really prioritize audio. But we'll want to make sure that we know what options are available for our speakers so that they have good support in this area. I would consider this session to be an interactive session. We're definitely facilitating a conversation around the ideas that I'm presenting. There will be more facilitated doing tomorrow. So I'm working on modeling some of the best practices for engaging in interactive presentation for us today. As far as the length of presentation, a couple of important factors are being human, because too much focused screen time is really tough. And the type of session. So information sessions should typically be shorter. Doing sessions, where we're facilitating learning with peer interaction, group breakout time, screen breaks to reflect or conduct some doing exercises, allows us to extend the length of that conversation. I deliver 3-hour virtual trainings all the time, but there's a lot of interaction. There's a lot of doing and screen breaks. We're not just sitting and listening for that length, because that would just be unkind. And we're going to talk a little bit more about session length in a few minutes. Equipment, just like we have screens and lav mics and flip charts at our conference centers in our session rooms, our presentation equipment is very important to our presentation experience virtually as well. Again, we definitely want to prioritize audio, HD video if possible. I have HD camera on top of my screen here, and so you can see the difference that, you know, just a laptop camera would have over an HD piece of equipment. Mine it's a USB connect, and so this is a piece of equipment that you could send to a keynote. You could ship to a speaker if you wanted to make sure that they had great looking video quality. We want to ensure speakers, if they have a headset or, you know, microphones or earbuds that we're testing for that audio quality, making sure that they have appropriate equipment or that we can recommend appropriate equipment. And of course, you know, our keynotes or plenary or profile speakers will want to prioritize in that regard if you want to ship equipment, and make sure everyone is comfortable with the equipment that they're using so we can talk through any adjustments. A word about backgrounds. So the Zoom backgrounds have made for some awesome good times in staff meetings and even conferences as well. If you are planning on supplying backgrounds for presenters, I recommend that you test that they work versus being a distraction, because different environments handle digital backgrounds well and not so well. And we don't want that to be a distraction for your attendees. So speakers should always evaluate their background to make sure it's uncluttered, that there's nothing personal that they don't want to broadcast in their background, that it's professional looking, that people of varying degrees of dress won't just walk into the background. We want to make sure that a background check is part of our pre-flight checklist for speakers in our tech run through. And finally, that presenter versus producer role, we're going to dig into that a little bit more later, but while not every organization is able to separate these roles, it is a best practice to ask speakers to focus on their presentation and interaction while partnering with the staff on the session production pieces like, you know, tech issues, breakout rooms, polls, and that kind of stuff. And, you know, if say we're asking speakers to deliver presentations virtually, but we don't want them to be a content fire hose. We want learners to engage with the speaker and the content, and we want to tell speakers to be engaging, but we feel worried that it will turn out to be the old experience. We can offer them some different formats for thinking through their content, such as the 10 by 10. So in that speaker prep column, if you don't have an extensive library of, you know, format templates for virtual events, which hardly anyone does, the 10 by 10 method is really an easy grab and go one that's awesome for speakers, that they can look at existing content and kind of modify it in that respect. What I mean by a 10 by 10 is thinking about your content in terms of approximately 10 minutes of content and 10 minutes of interaction for a 60-minute session, and then put that on repeat. It doesn't have to be exactly 10 minutes. We're not going to stop watch anyone, you know, and clock their time, but just thinking in terms of how can I present a piece, and then we can interact around it a little bit, and then present a little bit more and build on that, and we can interact a little bit more around that. We're going to end up with sessions that feel integrated, as well as feel like we're able to contribute as well as learn from our peers. So it gives us an opportunity to introduce those interactions that we so want our speakers to embrace. So we'll definitely have to prepare our speakers on the features available on the platform and their purpose. There is, at the end of your workbook, several pages that describe features in Zoom and their purpose, just as an example for something you might prepare for your speakers so that they know what's available to them and why they would use those features. I recommend demoing light, video, and vocal quality when you're running your AV checks. Right now I have a light source in front of me, and you can see if I change the color of the light, it makes a big difference of your experience. So thinking in terms of what might be optimal, we definitely don't want backlighting. We don't want any spooky creatures speaking in our events. But now we have, you know, a couple of new things to think about when we're orienting our speakers to their presentation spaces, and of course managing their home or office environment. There's just some new considerations, and some of our speakers are great about it and experienced with that, especially if they're faculty and they're, doing this on the regular, and some might need a little coaching. So some things to keep in mind for those individual presentations and education sessions. So panel sessions come with their own set of best practices. Just to chat through a few of these. Something important for us to think about is our panel being moderated versus assigning, identifying a discussion leader. So moderated polls can feel a little stiff in this environment, in the virtual environment. If we position that role as a discussion leader, we can get more of a dynamic conversation going. And even with the nomenclature, that helps us along a little bit in just preparing a more interactive and robust experience that plays well on a screen. We really want to root those panels in a compelling question. And so that question is really designed to inspire the panel to have a great discussion, but also to engage the participants in conversation. And when I work on panels, I really want that compelling question, that foundational question, to be all about solving a problem. So at the top of our time together, we're talking about what are some of the problems that, what are some of the concerns that our members have right now? If we're focusing on solving those problems in a panel, not only is it a dynamic conversation, but everyone is dialed in and tuned in for that. They want to solve that problem together. And so for our speaker preparation, we can think in terms of, do we want our panels to be live, or do we want them to be pre-recorded? I'll be interested to hear what your opinions on that. I've seen both very effective. I actually kind of like pre-recorded panels because here's why. It gives us an opportunity for our panelists to interact more robustly with participants in the chat. And so they can actually be having conversations side by side with the audio conversation in the chat to go deeper on some of the concerns that those who are in the audience have as they're listening to the presentation, which is really stimulating. It offers two ways to really dig into that problem solution panel compelling question. So thinking about handling it live versus pre-recorded, it's something for us to think through. We can talk about that. Camera is critical. We want everyone on camera. We want, to be sure that everyone is well seen because we need those faces in order to convey not only personality, but to develop rapport, and really important for those who are having that discussion together as well. We want the conversation to be organic as much as possible versus having prepared slides and you talk about this and you talk about that. We really want that discussion leader to prepare, the panelists with what we're going to talk about, but be really present in the moment and driving the conversation with sub-questions, et cetera, to make sure that that conversation is organic. It's important for our panels, of course, to pre-meet, to refine their set of questions in advance and to plan the conversation cadence. But we also want to pause for some interaction intervals as well. So if it's going to be live, those could be, face-to-face. If it's going to be in the chat, we can plan for those intervals in the chat as well. So in a virtual session, it goes without saying that rambling is a tough sell. We have to work on really being succinct. We have to be practiced. We have to keep our presentations and our discussions tight and focused. And so some of these key attributes paired with great speaker prep can help us get there. So our one powerful question today for us to just ruminate on, to think about, to digest and to personalize is, what urgent needs can we solve for our members through learning and networking? Because that will really inform the kinds of experiences that we want to bring together in this virtual space for them. Because ultimately, learning solves problems. And solving problems is the relevance that even reticent members who wish they were hugging necks at the convention center will register for. They will attend for that because we're all solving top of mind issues, top of mind challenges. Information is of course important, especially in the medical profession. But the promise of learning is to be or do something new, different, or better. And that's why you're here today, right? I would imagine you're interested in producing programs that not only attract participants, but positively impact them in their day-to-day lives. So the continuing education market really favors transformation from a marketing and sales perspective, from an attendance and engagement perspective as well. And learners as a consumer market are seeking programs and experiences that are relevant to those goals that we talked about already, to the problems that they want to solve. So a key to selecting topics that will excite your members, that will drive registration, is to really understand specifically who you're targeting and what challenges and goals they're addressing through learning and networking, which was our quick take question number 2. So once we've identified those topics, those inform our objectives for the event, and that will inform what pieces, what formats we'll want to piece together in order to create an experience that they'll be excited about. So what can some of those session formats look like? Let's take a quick tour of some things that I'm seeing in the market right now. Dropped up for just a second there. Want to make sure recording. Everyone's here? Okay. Are you able to hear me? Okay, good. All right, perfect. Sorry about that. We'll continue. All right, so some sample formats. So first, a word about why so many of us recommend short sessions in the virtual space. And what kinds of formats work best in different lengths. So sitting and focusing on a computer screen is particularly physically demanding. It's demanding to our body, to our brain, to our eyes. It requires a variety in the session. It requires breaks in order to stay alert, to take care of our human needs, to be compassionate toward how participants process digital content. We're designing around a few different behavior patterns when we're creating an engaging virtual conference experience. The first is that while at in-person events, attendees will hold expectation that they can step out in the hallway during the session to network. They could take a call, they could respond to an email, or even coordinate meetings during sessions that they might, go to instead of a session. So attendees are used to being free and mobile to meet their needs during an event, right? So partner that with the fact that we don't sit at a computer all day without moving because it's physically uncomfortable and it's difficult to attend. So combining these patterns, attendees of full day conferences are likely to accept outside meetings on their calendar. They are expecting that they can come and go, since both the meeting and the conference are located in the same desk space. That's just a reality that we have to deal with. So as we design the experience, session duration, breaks, lengths of days, meaningful interaction, they're going to win better commitment. They're going to win better attendance and engagement. So that's something for us to really be thinking about. Short session formats are great for information-based presentations, as I had just mentioned. So by offering short sessions and content sprints, as I call them, we allow frequent stretches and speaker topic variety, which holds attention. So pairing that with conversation really increases engagement as well as takeaway value. If sessions are intended for deeper dives into doing type learning, including interaction with the speaker, peers, breakouts, and all of that, even solo or pair work, 60 or 90-minute sessions are great. And we can build in stretches, we can build in bio breaks into those, standing segments, like a standing Q&A, like to do that. You can, have a refill break for water, things like that. Reflect and return breaks, things like that, where participants have an assignment of a question to answer, and then they return and share their thoughts after a break. So by formats right now, what I'm talking about is really on the session level. Can't see the slides? Okay. Let me see what's going on with that. Thank you for letting me know. Sorry about that, everyone. Goofiness. There we go. We good? Excellent. Perfect. Let me pop my chat out. Okay. So now you can see the sample formats. You haven't missed anything. We're getting to it. So by formats, I'm talking about on the session level right now. Within the session and between sessions, we design interactions, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And that, of course, greatly contributes to the success of any event. An example of an in-between session interaction would be content weaving, for example, or facilitated networking. An example of an in-session interaction, of course, could be polls, facilitated chat discussions, screen annotations. There are many, and we'll chat about those. So some sample successful formats that I'm seeing include short formats for information-based presentations. They could be live or recorded with chat. Longer interactive format for doing based content, like live with multiple interactions. There could be practice pit stops. Panels and problem solution sessions. So the panels could be live or recorded. And then they allow for group interaction with a deliverable. So it's not just the panel discussing a problem or a challenge, but they tee up the conversation that a small group then will go and create a deliverable around, something, a personalized tool or something that they can use when they leave the session based on that panel conversation. I'm seeing on demand with expert AMAs, so ask me anythings. So there could be an on-demand recorded content piece, and then the subsequent piece is expert one or several that are featured for a live Q&A around that on-demand content. Industry news gives us a break from some of the other types of content that we typically offer, but still delivers information-based content. So that can be live and then on demand later. It can also, I love this one, be featured as live podcast interviews. So it's kind of fun to be in the studio audience of a live podcast that's then produced for later release in your podcast series. I have some clients who have a lot of place-based content. And one of them is the Master Brewers Association of the Americas. And so in converting some of their events online, they feel like they're missing the brew tours, right? Where they go and they see how, everything is connected and how this, brewery solved that problem and how they're using malts this way and that way, all of those good things. So we're creating GoPro tours. We're going to create some virtual tours, and for our first iteration, they will be recorded, but in future iterations, they will be live and they'll be able to take questions live. So that's a fun thing to think about. You can still include place-based content. And then video share takeaways. I mean, why should you have all the fun recording video? Allow your attendees to submit video. And this is an awesome opportunity to engage your younger generation of members as well, those young professionals. Ask them to share their best nuggets, their next steps, their post-event touches, so that they can interact with each other through the video clips that they submit. This also is great data for you in planning your program year, because there's often not only great takeaways, but great questions and challenges that our participants want answered next. So let's have a conversation. So tell me in the chat what you've heard about how long virtual sessions should be. What your, when you're wrestling with your event design right now, when shorter or longer sessions are beneficial for your content. Let's just have a conversation around that so that we can be starting to build some criteria around decision-making for the length of sessions for your events. So let's have a conversation around that. What are you hearing? What are you experiencing in your design right now? Is what I said about session lengths resonating with you, or what's your experience right now? Shorter. Shorter is good. Yeah. Shorter is better. Shorter definitely especially for information, it just offers us that variety. There's more ideas, there's more speakers, it breaks up monotony. So that tends to really be helpful. 60 to 90 minutes. Yep. Pretty standard. I'm seeing some 20-minute and 30-minute sessions, but they're like sequential, right? So it's one topic with short sessions offering different speaker perspectives on a topic. So if you would have offered a 90-minute session with 3 speakers, now it could be 3 shorter presentations for their perspectives, something to think about. Multi-day conferences moving to 1 session per week rather than back-to-back days. Yeah, I'm definitely seeing that too. because we can integrate it into our workday. And also it offers us that yummy touch point, frequent touch points. So we're developing a relationship with our learners through our content, which is amazing. Polls and sessions are great. And that's a great way to break up the conversations too, and also to give the speakers some data about what's happening in the room, so that they can modify any of their content as needed. The lawyer answer, let's hear it here. It depends. Okay, that's true. That's true. If it's a panel or a single speaker, perhaps 45 to 60 minutes in small breakout rooms. If you're going to have those small breakouts, then 90 minutes definitely works. That's a great criteria for thinking about it. And just ensuring that if you're going to have those longer formats, I would consider 60 minutes a long format, to be thinking about breaks, and to be thinking about how we're going to have interaction in that 60 minutes. So that 10 by 10 format can help us get there. It's a great bridge to that. Excellent. I like that as a criteria, definitely. So to wrap up on section length, here are a few guidelines as a recap for your consideration. Think about what your session outcomes are. Is the content informational or interactive? If we offer informational content by other digital means, what could that look like? What's available to us with the technology and tools that we already have at ADEA? And could we partner a shorter session with other digital informational content? Does everything have to be a presentation? It's a great challenge for us to think through. And can we meet our session outcomes via these alternatives, or are we just cutting time without equal efficacy here? So we don't want to just cut time for the sake of making things shorter, because we have objectives we want to meet, but we don't have to meet those objectives always with a presentation. We can think about some of our other opportunities to craft meaningful content that's digestible and also on demand for our busy professionals attending our conference. So let's think for a moment about some networking formats. So often we will separate education and networking in our minds as if they're separate activities. And at some conferences they are, but we'll see attendees will sit and listen to presentations, and then they'll step in the hallways, right? And they'll attend parties to process out loud with other participants. And that's actually not ideal. So networking should begin in the classroom. It should begin around the content so that we can easily identify people that we want to connect with in those conversation spaces. So think about it. When you think about why you network at events, it could be to find colleagues with similar interests and goals, to meet people from organizations that we're interested in, find mentors, meet prospective clients, or identify people who are solving problems that we're solving. It could be to meet people with interesting perspectives or a unique skill set. Could be to meet people who can introduce us to people, to connect with others and learn from their experiences, right? So the reason that so many find it difficult to network is actually not an introvert-extrovert thing. It's a cold conversation thing. And so you step into a hallway, it's teeming with people, the party is full of professionals that you don't know, and you have to find inroads into a conversation, right? So the brain bomb here is that those conversations can and should begin in our sessions, in the classrooms, where we can offer that introduction and that warm-up so that our participants can identify people they want to have continued conversations with. So a few of those opportunities could be having pre-event social ops. So the Washington Society for Association Executives, before their annual conference that went virtual, had Shop Talk Wednesdays. And it was 30 minutes that there was an open Zoom room, and there was a theme for the conversation, but it wasn't like scheduled, regimented. It was really a pop-in, right? And they used those Shop Talk Wednesdays to introduce participants to the types of technologies they would use at their annual conference. Was amazing. So they got to practice and play with some of the features that they would then be using in order to participate fully in the event. You can use your event app to begin pre-event social opportunities. Use an online community or social media. That's what SM is, social media, sorry. And you can prime the event through your e-news, through offering handouts in advance, through pre-work, through all kinds of different ways, getting people in the right mindset for the type of learning that they'll be having. And those are opportunities for us to like have conversation and network around the experience that we're anticipating. Session interactions, of course, we need to set the table for the type of interactions that we'll have, and that allows us to have those warm conversations and encourage our participants to have post-session touches in conversations that we've prepared for them, or perhaps they take initiative to reach out to those colleagues. Virtual roundtables are a great way to network as well. That can be driven in Zoom. That, of course, can be in virtual reality, but even just having a Slack channel open. If you have community software, you can facilitate it there as well, but Slack channels, especially for young people, students, maybe dental students want to have their own Slack channel and network around their experience, that's an opportunity for them. And also to have some facilitated or drop-in type of roundtables, which are just open rooms, kind of like the shop talk, but would be during your event. Planned serendipity is something that we can think about because since we don't have that spontaneous serendipity, how can we integrate our community, problem-solving chats, hashtags, speed networking, social media profile links, all of those things to help our attendees connect with one another. So how can we provide spaces or opportunities for them to find one another digitally so they can continue to have conversations with one another? Something for us to think about. And then, of course, post-event social opportunities, which are becoming more and more important because when we're in the virtual space, we have the opportunity to continue the conversation, right? So how can we generate additional conversation after an event with kind of a meetup type approach, or a speaker's book club, or keeping the Slack channel open for a couple weeks until the next event or the next engagement with ADEA. So some different ways to think about how to facilitate conversations that we warm up in the session room and keep going in all of these different networking and conversation spaces. So a word about breaks. So first, feel free to stand and stretch for this conversation if you like. If you need a little move about, that would be fine. Give yourself a chair break. So why do we break in in-person events? Often it's logistics. We're getting people from one place to another. Perhaps they're having a coffee or a bio break. We're getting refreshments. We're being compassionate to our guests who are sitting all day, right? We're having meals. In the virtual space, though, breaks take on a different meaning. Because we're intending to hold our audiences captive on a screen, we have to think about breaks as energy. So breaks equal energy. In a virtual setting, we have to be mindful of how we're managing the energy of the experience throughout its duration. Breaks can break up the flow. And honestly, this type of variety can also be offered during sessions as well as in between them. So when we think about breaks, not only helping us manage energy, but create energy, these pit stops then take on a new form. And so I'd like to share with you 5 different types of breaks that we can be thinking about in order to manage energy in our virtual events. The first is offering a mood boost. This is when we really want to jazz up the joints. We want to pep up the peoples. This is often the job of someone like an energy moderator, but can also be woven skillfully throughout the day by several event leaders. This could be music. I have a client that started their event with a live musical performance by a remote artist, virtually performing. It was amazing. Pep rally type warm-ups, laughter, surprises. That could be a surprise guest or gifts. One client mailed everyone a care package that they could open at the beginning of the conference, and it included, I don't have it next to me anymore, but computer glasses that were colored in the event's theme, as well as a beautiful notebook for the event and a pen and some yummy things from some of the sponsors. So that was a fun surprise. Everyone loved that. And novel things. We really want to think about building anticipation. One of the things I love to do is cliffhanger breaks. That's what I call them. It's teasing what's to come, right? We want people to come back to their computers after breaks. So we leave them at a cliffhanger, kind of like, in between the episodes of our favorite show when they make us want to binge on for the entire season. Think about how we can build cliffhangers into your sessions as well. The second type of break is a positional shift. So that's physically stretching and moving. So that could be standing chats. It could be yoga breaks between sessions. It could be recorded content where you encourage people to walk and return to live sessions. Could be facilitating movement, targeting specific areas of fatigue that when we're sitting at desks or in front of computers, could be neck, shoulders, wrists, wrists, backs, hips, legs, get people to stand and twist, and you can just easily integrate that as I have done in this session. The third type of break is a mental shift. And this is because participants so easily slip into a passive mode when we're online because speakers are just accustomed to speaking. We need to offer them an opportunity to mentally shift from a passive to an active brain stance. So we want them to process, to think, to create, to do, and then we can facilitate that before, during, and in between sessions, and even after the event if we choose. So a journal with prompts, asking us to get ready to learn and to personalize our experience. We can trigger imagination and curiosity. We may, need to envision our happy place if we're in a stressful place, or get people curious about what's coming next in a session. We can offer industry trivia, initiate a challenge to solve, and co-create a solution. Maybe those participant submitted videos are their solution to a challenge that you've posed. Could offer peer interaction during and between sessions in a variety of different ways that really triggers us into that active brain state for a great mental shift. The fourth is to just offer human needs breaks. Meals, of course, bio breaks, just stepping away and resting our eyeballs. Because if we want engagement and we want investment, we also have to allow for our human needs and not burn out our people's eyeballs. And then the fifth, of course, are social breaks. And those could be the digital roundtables that we talked about, could be facilitated networking, could be easy ways to connect and chat with other attendees, whether that's connecting via social media profiles or your event app or profiles in your event portal. It could be even priming participants to notice that during your interactive session, whoever they're vibing with, they might want to continue connecting with them and prompting them with the different ways that you offer conversation spaces or channels to connect over breaks or after the conference. So let's have a conversation again, and we'll have this conversation by voice. So we've talked about formats, lengths, we've talked about lengths of sessions and breaks. So how does this think through your run of show? All of this that we've just let's integrate this now in how we could format your virtual run of show utilizing some of these ideas. So where are you now thinking in terms of personalizing this for the events that you're planning and producing? How does this impact your run of show? You can go ahead and unmute. Let's have a conversation.
Well, hi, my name is Camila. Tracy, I would say that you've given us, or me, a lot of ideas for how we can break up the content and how it can not just be, a steady stream of information flowing out, and how we can engage our audience more.
Awesome. So when you think about compiling that into a run of show, what's going through your mind?
I suppose perhaps initially I might have been thinking about just doing it presentation style, but a lot of the ideas that you provided during the slide deck are very intriguing. especially about gamification, doing different types of breaks, any kind of polling, just trying to, shake it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, get that variety and that novelty in there. So part of that will be our speakers' responsibility, coaching them to incorporate some of those great features into their presentations. And some of that will be our facilitation, our event facilitation responsibility, what we can do to tee up sessions, to prime sessions, to get people connecting in between and around the conference, especially if we're extending it over a longer period of time, as so many are experimenting with now. What else? What else is top of mind right now as you're integrating these ideas?
Hey, Tracy, this is Donna. I just wanted to say I'm trying to take this all, and this is great information. One of the things that I wrote down and put a lot of exclamation points by is the 10 by 10 format. I had a big resounding yes for that. Totally love the 10 by 10 format.
Yeah, it's so easy for our speakers to latch onto and already begin to think about their content through that lens. When we say please be engaging and please use all of our features, that can feel overwhelming. But if we ask them just to think in that 10 by 10 frame by frame, then suddenly it just becomes more manageable. So yeah, definitely put that one to use. Other ideas for integrating these concepts into your event flow? What questions do you have that I can help you with?
Hi, Tracy.
Hey, Audra.
How are you?
Good.
Good. So one of the things I really like that I think we could use at ADEA is the cliffhanger. And I love that concept of sort of building anticipation, ending one session, but building anticipation for the next. Mm-hmm. And I think you could move some of these together and also include like a physical break, right? So get up and stretch, but still get people thinking about what's coming up next. So thank you for that.
Exactly, I love that. So in one conference that I just worked on, we employed the cliffhanger in both of those ways. As we were introducing sessions, the intro slide included a kind of a cliffhangery type of statement or question that would be answered during the session. So people would want to be invested to stay tuned and stay for the entire session. As we wrapped up sessions, we also included kind of like a teaser for upcoming content, especially if it connected to what was presented in that session. And then when we had physical screen breaks, there was always a cliffhanger so that everyone would be excited to return instead of getting deeply invested in whatever was happening in their house or on another screen or something like that. So cliffhangers can be used in a lot of ways. In the toolkit that I provided for you, this is outside of the workbook, but in a separate tool, I've crafted some formulas for different types of transitions, and cliffhanger is one of them. So you'll have some parameters around writing your own cliffhanger content.
Thanks, Tracy. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Tracy, this is Chris. I really like the idea that you mentioned earlier about giving attendees the opportunity to sort of, look at the platform really and kind of work through the experience prior to the meeting. I think that would alleviate a little bit of anxiety and could probably even build some enthusiasm about the conference.
For sure. It's so much more comfort, right? When they know an environment that they'll be presenting, they can just feel more at ease and be more present when they are presenting. For sure.
Hey, Tracy.
Jump on in there.
This is Sandy, and I was just going to say I attended a online conference that I think you probably helped them with because they did a lot of these things. But one of the really fun things that they did was they kicked off the conference itself with an hour-long kickoff event, and that allowed people, it was exactly that kind of thing. It was almost no content at all, but just mostly people being able to practice using the chat and doing private chat and experimenting with polls and things like that.
That's amazing. That's a great idea.
Tracy, this is Donna again. Just real quick, you had talked earlier about the multiple digital mode strategies. Mm-hmm. Can you give some examples, or did you give some examples and I just missed it?
Yeah, some examples are, for instance, pairing some pre-recorded on-demand content with live content. It could be that you offer some things in article format, in short form video format, in podcast recording format, or other digital formats that ADEA is accustomed to using and your members are accustomed to receiving and accessing information, so that we can get out of the pattern of thinking that everything has to transition from a presentation in person to a presentation online, because we have so many different tools and ways to convey ideas, information, and trigger conversation. And so could those conversations happen in a chat? Yes. By voice? Yes. In Slack channels or communities, or in the app? Yes. There are a lot of different ways we can think about using all of the tools at our disposal to also generate novelty, variety, and allow people to continue connecting with our content even after the big show ends. Does that help?
Very helpful, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah.
This
Excellent.
is Susan. I have a question that builds on both Donna and Chris's points around, we've seen a lot of different formats, and we've talked a little bit about sort of training your attendees in addition to training your speakers to be most effective using that format. Can you talk a little bit about best practices for how many different varieties of delivery you might want to have in a single event? Just in terms of keeping people from having to kind of switch format and processing style, 5 times in a single day kind of thing.
Right, and that comes back to kind of the coherence question, right? If you'll be offering lots of different types of content, I recommend that there be one portal where everything lives. So it can make sense in terms of the flow of your meeting, but it can allow for different ways to access content and information. And if you're offering a meeting that typically was over 3 days and now it'll be over 3 weeks, that portal is open, right, for that duration of time. So that allows the opportunity for that on-demand content to be accessed on a self-directed basis versus on a time schedule basis. And so then when we have that extended length of time, we can offer a lot of different formats. So it won't seem incoherent as a conference, but it will offer lots of different ways to digest those yummy content bits. Could even be infographics or, other fun pieces as well. It could be the submitted videos that they have a space in your event portal that people can, in a self-directed manner, access for their own either fun, enjoyment, or learning.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. We'll keep those good questions coming. That's great. I'm going to just keep us moving on our schedule here. We definitely want to touch on engagement while we're together today. So all of this delves nicely into a conversation about engagement. I really want to dig into this question. If you have additional questions around it, we can address them tomorrow as well. But because we want to ensure that our participants are not only engaged, but we don't lose them to their other desktop tabs and apps. But first, if you do need a quick 3-minute bio break or refill break, let's take that right now, just to be human and kind to you as well. And so 3:42, so around 3:46, we'll come back together and we'll finish up this segment on engagement. So
Tracy, and we're Eastern.
And you're Eastern, so that would be 4:46 for you. Mm-hmm. And if anyone is going to stay here, you can have Q&A with me while others are getting a refill or taking a quick bio break. I will be here on camera, here to engage with you.
Hey, Tracy.
Hey.
It's Anthony. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, I was just at a meeting where, first, I love the idea of the breaks equal energy. It just made me rethink everything. Mm-hmm. And I was at a meeting where during the break, they had 4 rooms and we had a digital puzzle, which I think was the mental thing. Mm-hmm. There was a dance room where everyone just danced to music and watched each other. That was the body. Yeah. One was a bingo room, and I saw that as the social. Yeah. And then there's a meditation room. and you just chose which room you wanted to go to, and they put you in those rooms for 10 minutes.
Perfect.
Depending on what you needed. So everyone got their needs met, and it was really wonderful.
That's amazing. What a great example.
Yeah, so, cool.
Which room did you choose?
I was in the puzzle room.
Yeah.
And I know I have a link to this digital puzzle. They're free. I don't know if I could send it to you, but
yeah, I would love to see that.
It was really amazing. They're just kind of very psychedelic.
Wow. So was it a collaborative puzzle experience, or did you have your own puzzle?
You had your own puzzle, and you had to like move the pieces around and try to build it. Yeah.
Oh, that's
and
so fun.
Time was going on and stuff like that. We also did the cliffhangers, which were great. And they did them where there was a question and you had to wait to come back for the answer. And so you got to see people doing polling. So how many people were picking A, B, C, or D? So you had that competitive edge, waiting to see what the answer was going to be a leader.
Yeah. That's a great example of a cliffhanger.
Yeah. So those are all really, it's so much, you really can have a lot of fun here. So I like the whole idea of thinking about creating it from nothing also.
Yeah.
Makes me want to scratch all our meetings and start again.
Okay, everyone just had a heart attack. We can do this. Awesome. I love that.
I'll put the puzzle link in the chat.
Perfect.
All right, cool. And thank you so much. This has been really great.
Good.
Just something I'll share. I was going to share it later, but something I learned from you is that how you stayed calm during the tech issues. And I think that's really important. I think we all freak out a little bit about, if something breaks down. And when the speaker gets all frazzled about the technology, it made the group feel lost also. But when the speaker's like, okay, we're reconnected, I got lost, and you keep that calm, I think it's very important for the audience. I think people feel safe.
Yeah, that's a great point, because our anxiety also impacts the energy in the room, right?
Totally.
And so thinking about how we can just be confident that we've got our plan B in place and we'll get reconnected and things will be okay. And it's kind of like when you're presenting in person and you skip a point, instead of apologizing and telling people you're sweating,
yes,
just come back around to it and no one will be the wiser, right? Everyone will be like, oh, great point. And so just keeping your cool is part of feeling practiced.
Yeah, totally. And you're good at that. So.
Oh, appreciate that. All right.
Tracy, this is Don again. I know you're about to start again, but I just want to make sure, and if you don't get to it today, will you talk about post-event strategies too?
Let me take a note about that. We can definitely talk about it. Okay, cool. And if you have specific questions around that, you can email me and I can specifically address questions about that tomorrow as well.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. All right, so how we set the room communicates the type of experience that participants can anticipate, right? So if we're in rows, we're expecting a lecture or a panel, it's going to be passive, it's going to be a listening experience. We might be able to have side-by-side quick interactions, but we expect in some ways to be entertained in this set. Think about theater and ball games and passively riding in a bus or in train rows, right? When we are in a workshop, we're in rounds or we're in a square, we know that this table is set for an interactive facilitated experience. We're going to be expected to contribute to a conversation. There are norms in a set like this. When we're in this set, we're networking, we're at a cocktail party, there are different, types of tables, sizes, sitting, standing, we know this is going to be interactive, it's self-motivated, yet less formal conversation experiences. So the spaces and the furniture in the room, of course, will tell us the types of interactions that we can expect to have. If there's a super loud band, then we know we're not going to be able to get into, really deep conversations. If we're only stand-up tables, we know that we're not supposed to settle in one spot for too long. If seating is in groups, then we know we can settle in and get deeper into a conversation. So our space design tells participants how to engage with one another. But what does this tell you? Right? Not much right now. And that's amazing because the norms in the virtual computer mediated space, they can be passive or interactive. You get to choose. So it's important for us to be thinking about how we're setting the tone to communicate our expectations because the norms for these spaces have not yet necessarily been set. We have some attitudes about webinars. but for virtual events, we have the opportunity to set the norms. So think about how we started our session today. We started it with a conversation, right? And so I set the tone for our time together to be a conversation where I would, chat with you about some best practices, and then we talk about how you could use those in your context. That's how I was setting the tone and setting the expectation, setting the room for what you could anticipate in terms of what this session would be like. So we need to be intentional about that. And so the 10 by 10 formula, which has resonated with you, definitely a great way for us to get there in a short amount of time. So definitely recommend using that. So a conversation for us to have is about virtual retention. We often think about engagement just in terms of what the presenter is going to do, but we can also be thinking in terms of how do we retain people in front of their screen. So, member retention is something we talk about all the time. What about virtual retention? So tell me in the chat, what distracts you when you're attending virtual meetings or events? What pulls you away from your screen? Email, so much email. Yep, more and more email. Notifications, okay. Email, email and notifications, they go together. Whatever's outside my window, yeah, well, we can't stop that from happening, right? Mr. Fluff, tell me more. Hunger, oh, that's a good one. Yep, bored, yeah, bored from the presentation. Wordy PowerPoint, so not really being thoughtful about our visuals. The visual medium is so central in the virtual environment that oh, there's Mr. Fluffy. Oh, I would be distracted too. Yeah, that's very distracting. Very cuddly and fuzzy yummy. Household distractions, definitely that can be squirrels, my inner dog. Yeah. Household distractions can be a consideration for sure. Physical discomfort, yep, from not having enough breaks, just external environmental distractions, right? So I'm thinking about how to retain our participants. We can think about being intentional in our scripts about silence your notifications. We'll have email breaks, or here are the times when our breaks are, so you can check your email. We can prompt people to hold off. Versus continually being connected to that. We can request people dedicate that time and put a sign on their door. I have one client who created a sign for their speakers to put on their door so that they wouldn't be disrupted during their presentations, but we could offer that to our attendees as well. I'm in a meeting, kinds of things. They could be fun or they could be professional, depends, what you want to deliver to your members. And of course, for those physical discomfort and hunger, being mindful of those, how we take care of our attendees as humans will help prevent some of those distractions. So what's the most engaging virtual session you've attended and why? At the beginning of our time together, someone mentioned dynamic speakers, but something that would retain you, something you can't pull away from the screen. What are those things? That it was fun. Tell us more about what was fun, John. Want to hear about that. What else? What helps you stay connected to the screen during a virtual meeting? Good connections, good content, yes. Stories instead of lecture, yeah, just underline that. Stories are so important in this medium. Having, some screen clips for polling and see what other people are thinking. That Sean says that the session is interactive. It's not just information presented, but it's more fun because we're interacting together. Having interaction and action items, right? So action we're taking together, but action I can do on my own later. Sharing experiences, which is just so crucial and center to when we host our get-togethers, right? Interesting graphics, yes. Our visuals are our primary mode of communication in this space. So having great visuals is important. Humor is great. Oh man, humor and spontaneity are awesome because that helps us build rapport virtually. It helps us to feel more comfortable and safe in this space together. takeaways that you can use immediately are amazing for sure. And if you know you can anticipate those, you're just going to stay glued to that space, right? Talking to the audience throughout and asking for live feedback and questions. I love that. Often, some speakers who may not be as experienced in this medium will think that the chat is for people to ask them questions, but I use the chat to ask you, my participants, questions. So we can just flip that script a little bit and make that chat more of an engaging conversation. It becomes a really effective tool. Excellent. For virtual retention. So you've answered your own question. How do we retain people? You have all of the answers already. So the engagement process, actually what's happening in the brain neurobiologically, which is triggering human curiosity and our investment because it's relevant to what we want to know, learn, be, or do, is the same process, but how we do it virtually is really the game in getting there. So the virtual environment can be just as engaging as a location-based event. It's not less than, it's just different. It's a different set of tools. It's different choices for facilitating experiences and for connecting. And you can explore a ton of ideas after this session with the resources at the end of your workbook. I've included a ton of stuff on engagement, on emotional connection, and on a variety of fun things you can infuse in your sessions and between sessions. And a quick aside, I'm sure you noticed that what I'm calling your workbook is really an easy engagement win in and of itself. I simply turn my slide deck into a workbook. So it's not just PDF slides. It's not even all of the slides of the presentations. It's the ones that present the tips and the processes that we're interacting around. And it allows you space to reflect and to capture action steps. So I didn't have to create anything new other than just offering space on my slides for you to capture what's important to you from this presentation. So really easy win there. So let's talk just for a few minutes about optimizing your learning materials and interactions for engagement. We are going to talk more about interaction tomorrow when we're talking about speaker prep, but I do want to just tee it up in our last few minutes together today. So what are we offering ADEA team right now in terms of learning materials? You can pop some ideas here in the chat. What are you offering right now? Pretty much PDFs of slides, or are there other resources for learning materials that we're offering at our events? PDFs of slides, okay. Very common. And often in the medical field, if we didn't, there'd be a stampede. I'm aware. But one of the things that I recommend, Mr. Fluffy, links to resources, very valuable. Yep. And some of those can be incorporated in the PDF slide deck as well. What I recommend is thinking in terms of transformational tools. So often in slide decks, there are particular slides that are really what our participants are looking for, and offering them as a tool so that they can actually do something or accomplish something with that as a resource after the event is supremely valuable to participants. And that's why transforming my slide deck into a workbook is more of a value add than if I just gave you my slides. Checklists are amazing. Yeah, so any job aids, anything that helps us apply or process content that we're learning in practice, so super valuable. So given the possible options, what might be an easy win and what might be a stretch goal in terms of the types of learning materials that we can offer our participants? So I am imagining that not everyone's offering checklists and additional resources. Probably everyone is offering PDFs for the most part of their slides. But what could we do to just stretch that a little bit further and more uniformly offer learning materials with sessions that would be awesome application takeaways? Suggested readings are great. Integrating with ADEA Connect. Yeah, let's talk about that some more. That's a great idea. What else could we do? What are some easy wins and some stretch goals for learning materials? Another one I see is Since we're in Zoom, and I'm not 100% sure if you'll be using Zoom for future events, the host gets a transcript of the chat, and that's an opportunity to pull out, de-identify great learning nuggets and reflect them back to the community post-session or post-event. So that's an awesome, easy win from a virtual standpoint. Sending suggested book to participants. Ooh, that would be a yummy gift to receive. I love that. How special would that make our participants feel? Even if it was a discount to purchase one of the speaker's books or something like that, that would even feel very valuable. Awesome. So it's important when we're thinking about learning materials to think about not only the information of the session, but think about how can we bridge this session experience to the doing, right? To the actual application, to improving or perfecting a practice, to solving a problem back at the office. So what can we do, what can we offer in terms of learning materials that not only help us focus in the session, but also translate into performance after the session. And so something like the workbook or those job aids, checklists, resources really help us to bridge that gap for our participants and become part of that value proposition that we were talking about at the top of the hour, that we want people to feel like, wow, that was not only worth it, but now I have all of these great takeaways to really improve my performance, to improve my practice, to be or do something better or different. Amazing. So just as a recap quickly, I know we're at the top of the hour. I'm going to give us a quick recap and then we'll close out our session today. So 7 considerations for engaging event design. These are the things that we've been talking about all through our design considerations component of the program today. We've been talking about the environment, exploring your options for engaging learners that really connect to your target learner and their target problem. So knowing who's going to be in the room, really important, because then you know what problems to target that your learning and networking can resolve. That's not only attractive from a marketing standpoint, but for being present and attending the event as well. Your learning objectives, think about them in terms of not the laundry list of things that we're going to cover in our content fire hose, but how we're going to facilitate getting our participants along the pathway from point A to point B. So when we're thinking about those issues, needs, and problems that we're resolving, our learning objectives are really the signposts of that journey. And then thinking about the learning experience. How are we going to grab attention, which is in part about managing energy? How are we going to provide knowledge base, but also interaction around it? And are there opportunities that we can already begin to practice when we're together in session, or through our application tools, our learning materials, those transformational tools that they'll be able to practice and apply after the event? Very valuable. Thinking in terms of our peer connections, how can we facilitate connections before, during, and potentially after our event? And then, of course, I always recommend that you think about next steps in learning and connecting with you. So how does what you're offering at this event connect to something else ADEA is doing in the calendar year? What's the next step that you can suggest for those participants to continue learning and connecting with you, to continue convening with you in the virtual space? This, of course, is going to play out a little bit differently with panels and workshops versus keynotes. But this is really these are the foundational questions when designing any experience, but today, of course, focusing on those virtual attributes and those notes that we really want to hit for our learners and our participants. Are there any questions about engagement that I can answer right now? And I want to invite that you bring questions tomorrow for the top of our time together as well. Thinking in terms of how we keep those participants engaged in what we're doing. Any questions? You can use voice or chat. Got a few ideas around engagement? Feel confident around that? Good, good. I'm glad. Well, if any questions do pop up this evening, tomorrow, be sure to bring them to the top of the hour, and we'll definitely answer those questions as we dig into the rest of our training. Tomorrow we'll be focusing a lot more on production, and then we'll also talk about that communication foundation. You're welcome, Mr. Fluff. For our internal stakeholders, speakers, as well as participant communication. So thank you everyone for being present and connecting with me around your questions and your ideas. I so appreciate it, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, everybody.